The dust spiraled upward as Zoe Jameson balanced awkwardly on her wooden cane, watching the crowd flow into Taylor's newly constructed dance hall. Arizona Territory, 1878, a place and time where a woman's worth was measured in practical terms, and Zoe, with her twisted left leg, often found herself on the outside looking in. But tonight, something made her brave the stares and whispers that had followed her since childhood. "You sure you want to go in there, Zoe?" her younger sister Meredith asked, concern etched across her sun-kissed face. "I didn't spend 3 hours on this dress to sit at home," Zoe replied, patting down the pale blue fabric that she'd carefully stitched by hand. At 22, she had attended precisely 18 dances in Taylor and had been a wallflower at every single one. Yet something about the spring air carried hope, foolish as it might be. The Jameson sisters had moved to Taylor 4 years ago after their parents died of influenza back in Missouri. They'd come west with nothing but a wagon of possessions and determination to make a new start. Their uncle's small ranch outside town provided them shelter, though Zoe mostly supported them both with her seamstress work now that Uncle Harold's rheumatism had worsened. As they entered the hall, fiddle music already filled the air. Lanterns cast a warm glow over the festivities, and the wooden floor vibrated with the stomping of boots. Zoe made her way to her usual corner chair, trying to ignore the sidelong glances that followed her limping gait. "Miss Zoe." "You've come," little Emma Wilson exclaimed, running up to her. At 8 years old, Emma was one of Zoe's few admirers, mostly because Zoe always sneaked her candy when fitting dresses for Emma's mother. "Wouldn't miss it," Zoe smiled, settling into her chair. "Your dress turned out beautiful." "You made it, so of course it did," the girl beamed before her mother called her away. The night progressed as all others had before Meredith was quickly swept into the arms of eager cowboys, while Zoe kept time with her foot and pretended not to mind. She watched young couples twirl and laugh, older married folk reminisce in corners, and the town spinsters gossip by the punch bowl. At 22, Zoe feared she was already on her way to joining their ranks. Just before midnight, the doors swung open, drawing every eye in the hall. A tall man stood silhouetted against the moonlight, trail dust still clinging to his clothes. He removed his hat, revealing tousled chestnut hair and a face weathered by sun and wind, yet undeniably handsome. "A stranger. Who is that?" whispered a woman nearby. "Must be passing through," another answered. "Never seen him before." The stranger nodded politely to Sheriff Davis before making his way to the refreshment table. Zoe couldn't help but watch him. There was something different about the way he carried himself, a quiet confidence that didn't need to announce itself. When the music resumed, Zoe returned to her people watching, resigned to her role as observer. She didn't notice the stranger moving through the crowd until his boots appeared in her line of sight. "May I have this dance, miss?" His voice was deep with a slight Texas drawl. Zoe looked up, certain he must be addressing someone else. But his green eyes were fixed directly on her, hand extended in invitation. I can't dance very well," she stammered, her hand instinctively moving to touch her lame leg. He smiled, creasing the corners of his eyes. "That's all right. I've got 2 left feet myself. We'll make a fine pair." Before she could form another protest, he'd gently taken her hand and helped her to her feet. "I'm Cole Zimmerman, by the way." "Zoe Jameson," she managed, heart pounding as he led her toward the dance floor. She could feel the stares and whispers following them. "Mr. Zimmerman, I really don't think—" "Just Cole, please. And I think we'll do just fine." True to his word, he didn't try to lead her in any complicated steps. Instead, he created a simple, slow pattern that accommodated her limited mobility. His hand at her waist was steady, supportive without being pitying. "You're new to Taylor," she said, desperate to distract herself from the sensation of being in a man's arms for the first time. "Just rode in this afternoon. I'm taking over the old Wilson ranch." Zoe's eyebrows rose. "Samuel Wilson's place. It's been empty for nearly a year." "My Uncle Sam," Cole nodded. "He wrote me about it before he passed. Left it to me in his will, though it took this long for the papers to find me. I've been working cattle drives between Texas and Kansas." As they moved slowly around the edge of the dance floor, Zoe gradually relaxed. Cole was leading her in such a way that her limp was barely noticeable, and his conversation flowed easily without the awkwardness she usually encountered. "How'd you know which one I was?" Zoe asked suddenly. "I beg your pardon," in the corner. "There were several ladies sitting there. How'd you know which one to ask?" Cole's smile deepened, revealing a dimple in his left cheek. "Sam's letters mentioned a talented seamstress with eyes the color of a summer storm. Said if I ever needed mending done, you were the one to see. He wrote about me." Zoe couldn't hide her surprise. "Said you were the kindest soul in Taylor, too. I can see he wasn't exaggerating." Zoe felt her cheeks flush. Old Samuel Wilson had been one of her favorite customers, always bringing her small gifts when he came to town: wildflowers in spring, apples in fall. "I miss him," she said softly. "He never treated me differently because of—" She trailed off, gesturing vaguely toward her leg. Cole's gaze remained steady on her face. People who judge others by what they can see aren't looking deep enough. When the music ended, Cole escorted her back to her chair but didn't leave her side. Instead, he pulled up another chair and spent the rest of the evening talking with her. Zoe couldn't remember the last time someone had shown such interest in her thoughts, her work, her dreams. By the time the dance ended and people began filing out into the night, Zoe felt like she'd known Cole Zimmerman for years instead of hours. He insisted on walking the Jameson sisters home, carrying Zoe's cane for her while offering his arm for support. "Will you be staying in Taylor long?" Meredith asked, shooting her sister a meaningful glance. "I intend to make it my home," Cole replied, his eyes finding Zoe's in the moonlight. "I've been drifting long enough." At their gate, Cole returned Zoe's cane with a small bow. "Miss Jameson, I find myself in desperate need of new shirts. The trail was hard on my old ones. Might I call on you tomorrow about some sewing work?" "Of course," Zoe replied, trying to sound professional despite the flutter in her chest. "I'm in the small white house behind the general store. Until tomorrow, then." He tipped his hat and disappeared into the night. Inside, Meredith immediately burst into excited chatter. "He couldn't take his eyes off you all night, and he's so handsome." "He was just being kind," Zoe insisted, though a small flame of hope had ignited in her heart. "Besides, once he sees how slowly I move around the shop, he'll realize I'm not worth the trouble." "Zoe Jameson, stop that this instant," Meredith scolded. "That man looked at you like you hung the moon and stars." Zoe merely shook her head and began the arduous process of preparing for bed, unwilling to nurture hopes that had been dashed too many times before. True to his word, Cole appeared at her shop the following afternoon, arms filled with worn shirts and a smile that made her pulse quicken. As she took his measurements, she tried to maintain professional detachment, but his every movement, every word drew her in. "Uncle Sam mentioned you had quite a story," Cole said as she measured across his shoulders. "Said you came here after losing your folks." 4 years ago, Zoe nodded, jotting down numbers in her ledger. "Influenza took them both within days of each other. I'm sorry." "I lost my parents young too, pa to a cattle stampede, ma to pneumonia after." Their eyes met in shared understanding of that particular grief. "Sam also mentioned something about your leg, though he never said what happened," Cole continued, his voice gentle but direct. Zoe stiffened slightly but continued her work. "Polio when I was 6. We lived in St. Louis then. The doctor said I was lucky many children died. I just lost the full use of my left leg." She glanced up, expecting to see pity in his eyes, but found only attentive interest. "Must have made you strong," he observed, "or stubborn," she smiled faintly. "My mother always said it was more the latter." Over the next few weeks, Cole became a regular visitor to Zoe's shop. He'd bring coffee or fresh baked goods from the bakery, claiming they were payment for her sewing, though Zoe suspected he was simply creating excuses to see her. Sometimes he'd stay for hours, telling her about his travels while she worked, or listening intently as she shared stories of Taylor's inhabitants. The town noticed, of course. Taylor was too small for anything to go unobserved, especially when it involved Zoe Jameson, whose romantic prospects had long been a subject of pitying speculation. Some approved Cole was hardworking, honest, and seemed to be making real improvements to the old Wilson place. Others whispered that he must have ulterior motives or that it wouldn't last. Zoe tried not to let the gossip affect her growing feelings for Cole, but years of self-doubt were not easily dismissed. One evening in late June, as Cole walked her home after dinner at the town's only restaurant, she finally voiced her concerns. "People are talking, you know," she said, her eyes fixed on the dusty road ahead. "People usually do," Cole replied easily. "Especially in small towns. They're wondering why you spend so much time with me when there are plenty of other eligible young women in Taylor. Women who can walk properly, who could help more around a ranch." Cole stopped walking, gently turning her to face him. In the fading sunset light, his expression was serious, almost stern. "You know why I asked you to dance that first night, Zoe?" She shook her head. "Because while every other young man was chasing after the obvious choices, I saw a woman with strength in her eyes and kindness in her smile. A woman who watched others dance with longing but not bitterness. That told me everything I needed to know about your character." His hand moved to cup her cheek. "I don't care what anyone in this town thinks. I've spent my whole life doing what was expected, following cattle trails, taking orders from trail bosses, never settling down because it was easier to keep moving. For the first time, I'm doing exactly what I want." Before she could respond, he leaned down and kissed her a gentle, questioning kiss that made Zoe's heart soar. When he pulled back, his eyes searched hers for a response. "I've never been kissed before," she whispered, a slow smile spread across his face. "Then I'm honored to be the first." His expression grew more serious. "But I hope you'll allow me to be the last as well." Throughout the summer, their courtship blossomed. Cole proved himself different from any man Zoe had known. He never tried to hide her disability or pretend it didn't exist, but he also never defined her by it. When she tired on longer walks, he'd simply find a place to rest without making her feel like a burden. When tasks were difficult, he'd offer help matter-of-factly, the way one partner naturally assists another. By August, Cole had made significant progress on the Wilson ranch. He'd repaired the main house, constructed new corrals, and acquired a small herd to start his cattle business. Zoe spent many evenings there, sitting on the porch as the sunset painted the sky in spectacular colors, imagining what it might be like to call such a place home. On one such evening, as they watched lightning illuminate distant clouds over the Arizona mountains, Cole took her hand. "I've been thinking, Zoe," he began, his voice carrying an unusual note of nervousness. "This house is too big for just one person." Zoe's heart began to pound. "Is that so?" "It needs a woman's touch, and he cleared his throat, suddenly standing and pulling her gently to her feet. Then, to her astonishment, he lowered himself to one knee before her. "I know we haven't known each other long by some standards, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I love you, Zoe Jameson. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Tears filled Zoe's eyes as she looked down at this man who had changed her life so completely in just a few short months. "Are you sure?" she whispered. "I won't ever be like other wives." "There are things I can't do." "I'm not asking other wives," Cole interrupted firmly. "I'm asking you exactly as you are. That's who I fell in love with." "Then yes," Zoe smiled through her tears. "Yes, I'll marry you." Their wedding took place in October, when the desert heat had subsided and the landscape glowed golden in autumn light. The entire town turned out. Even those who had gossiped seemed won over by the genuine love evident between the couple. Zoe wore a dress of her own creation, designed to accommodate her movements while enhancing her natural beauty. Cole's face when he first saw her walking down the aisle of Taylor's small church, her gait, uneven but her head held high, was a vision Zoe knew she would treasure forever. "You look like an angel," he whispered when she reached him. "Then you must be the luckiest man in Arizona territory," she whispered back with newfound confidence. Their life together began with both challenges and joys. Ranching was difficult work, and Zoe had to adapt many household tasks to accommodate her limitations. Yet Cole never complained, even when it meant he had to take on extra duties after long days with the cattle. Their first significant challenge came with the terrible drought of 1879. Springs and creeks dried up across the territory, and many ranchers lost substantial portions of their herds. Cole worked from dawn until well past dusk, moving cattle to the few remaining water sources, digging deeper wells, and watching the sky for any sign of rain. Zoe took over more of the ranch management than either had initially expected, keeping the books, ordering supplies, and coordinating with neighboring ranches to share resources. Her previous experience running her sewing business proved invaluable, and Cole often remarked that they weathered the drought better than many because of her sharp mind for figures and planning. When the rains finally returned in early 1880, their celebration was tempered by the discovery that Zoe was expecting their first child. Joy mixed with anxiety as she worried about how her physical limitations might affect her ability to care for an infant. "What if I drop the baby?" She confessed her fears to Cole one night. "What if I can't move quickly enough when needed?" Cole took her hands in his. "We'll figure it out together like we've figured out everything else. And remember, Mrs. Rodriguez said she'd help, and your sister too." Their son, Thomas Samuel Zimmerman, arrived in September 1880, a healthy, robust boy with his father's green eyes and his mother's determined spirit. Contrary to Zoe's fears, she proved to be an adept mother, developing systems and methods to compensate for her mobility challenges. A special sling allowed her to carry Thomas while keeping one hand free for her cane, and Cole built modified furniture that made childcare easier for her. As their family and ranch prospered, Zoe and Cole became fixtures in Taylor's community. Zoe continued her seamstress work, though on a reduced scale, and became known for hosting gatherings that brought together ranchers and townspeople alike. Cole served on the town council and helped establish Taylor's first proper school. Their love deepened with each passing year, weathering the inevitable storms of life, both literal and figurative, with the same steady partnership that had characterized their relationship from the beginning. They added to their family with a daughter, Clara, in 1882, and another son, Joseph, in 1885. Through it all, Cole never stopped asking Zoe to dance. At every social gathering, every holiday celebration, he would extend his hand just as he had that first night. And each time, Zoe would place her hand in his, moving across the floor in the unique rhythm they had created together. On their 10th wedding anniversary in 1888, Cole surprised Zoe by converting one of the ranch's outbuildings into a private dance hall, complete with a piano he'd had shipped from back east. "What's all this?" Zoe gasped when he unveiled his creation. "I realized something," Cole said, taking her hand. "That night we met, you told me you couldn't dance well. But Zoe, in all the ways that matter, you've been dancing beautifully your entire life, moving with grace through challenges that would have defeated others, finding your own rhythm when the world tried to silence your music." Tears filled her eyes as he continued. "I wanted a place where you could always dance freely, without stares or whispers, where our children can see the strength and beauty of their mother exactly as she is." That night, as moonlight streamed through the windows of their private dance hall, Cole and Zoe danced slowly in each other's arms, no longer young but still deeply in love. Their children watched from the doorway, witnessing the kind of love they would someday seek for themselves. "Do you ever regret it?" Zoe asked softly. "Choosing a wife who limps?" Cole's arms tightened around her. "The only thing I regret is that it took me 28 years to find you." He spun her gently, supporting her weight so that for a moment she felt as if she were floating. "Besides, we all limp through life in our own ways, Zoe. You're just honest about yours. As the years passed, Taylor grew from a small settlement into a proper town. The arrival of the railroad in 1895 brought new opportunities and challenges. The Zimmerman Ranch expanded, becoming one of the most successful operations in the county under Cole and Zoe's management, and later with their eldest son Thomas's innovative contributions. Their life together wasn't without sorrows. They lost their youngest son Joseph to pneumonia when he was 12, a devastating blow that tested their faith and resilience. Cole's brother died in a mining accident in Colorado, leaving 3 children whom the Zimmermans welcomed into their home and raised as their own. The economic panic of 1893 nearly cost them the ranch, saved only by Zoe's careful financial planning and Cole's willingness to diversify their operations. Yet through it all, their partnership remained unshakable. They faced each challenge together, drawing strength from the foundation they had built that first summer in Taylor. By 1908, they had 7 grandchildren who filled the ranch with laughter during family gatherings. Cole's hair had turned silver, and Zoe's once auburn locks were streaked with gray, but the way they looked at each other remained unchanged from those first days of courtship. That spring, as they celebrated their 30th wedding anniversary, the town of Taylor organized a special dance in their honor. The old dance hall had been replaced by a more elaborate structure years ago, but many still remembered the night when a dusty cowboy had walked in and asked the woman with a limp to dance. As the music played and their friends and family watched, Cole bowed formally to his wife. "Mrs. Zimmerman, may I have this dance?" Zoe's eyes twinkled as she placed her hand in his, the same hand that had hesitantly accepted his invitation 3 decades earlier. "I thought you'd never ask, Mr. Zimmerman." They moved across the floor with the comfortable rhythm of 2 people who had spent a lifetime learning each other's movements. Zoe's limp was more pronounced now, arthritis having joined her childhood affliction, but Cole matched his steps to hers just as seamlessly as always. "You know," Cole murmured close to her ear, "I think falling in love with you was the wisest thing I ever did." "Wiser than that time you tried to milk a bull," Zoe teased, referencing an infamous early ranching mishap. Cole laughed, the sound as warm and genuine as it had been in his youth. "Much wiser, though that bull did teach me an important lesson about looking more carefully before I leap." "And what did I teach you?" Zoe asked, her head resting against his shoulder. "That sometimes the greatest treasures are the ones others walk past without seeing," he replied, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "And that love isn't about finding someone perfect, it's about finding the person whose imperfections fit perfectly with your own." As evening deepened into night, their grandchildren joined them on the dance floor, 3 generations moving to the music together. Zoe watched her granddaughter Emily, who had inherited not only her grandmother's auburn hair but also her limp, dancing with a young man who looked at her with the same admiration Cole had shown Zoe all those years ago. "History repeats itself," Cole observed, following her gaze. "Let's hope so," Zoe smiled. "She deserves a love as good as ours." Later that night, as they sat on their porch watching the stars emerge over the Arizona landscape they both loved, Cole took Zoe's hand in his. "Do you remember what you told me before our wedding?" he asked. "About not being like other wives. I was scared," Zoe admitted. "I couldn't imagine anyone choosing me when there were so many women without my complications." "I've had 30 years to observe other marriages," Cole said thoughtfully. "And I can say with absolute certainty that choosing you was the best decision of my life. Your complications made you compassionate, resourceful, and strong in ways that shaped our family and this ranch." Zoe leaned her head against his shoulder, feeling the same flutter in her heart that his presence had always provoked. "When you asked me to dance that first night, I thought it was pity." "And what do you think now?" "That it was Providence," she replied softly. "That somehow, out of all the dance halls in all the towns across the West, you walked into mine." Cole squeezed her hand. Not somehow, Zoe. I was always meant to find you. As the years continued to pass, their love story became legendary in Taylor. Young couples were told about the cowboy who saw beyond a limp to the heart of a remarkable woman, and about the seamstress who found the courage to dance when everyone expected her to remain in the shadows. When Cole passed away peacefully in 1920, at the age of 70, Zoe was by his side, holding his hand just as she had through 4 decades of marriage. Though her grief was profound, she found comfort in the life they had built together and in the legacy that continued through their children and grandchildren. Zoe lived 5 more years, remaining active in the community and beloved by all who knew her. On quiet evenings, neighbors would sometimes see her sitting alone on her porch, a gentle smile on her face as if listening to music only she could hear. When she finally joined Cole in 1925, the entire town of Taylor came to pay respects to the woman whose life had taught them all about courage, perseverance, and the transformative power of love that sees beyond the surface. At her funeral, her granddaughter Emily shared a journal Zoe had kept throughout her marriage. The final entry, written just days before her death, read, "I've been thinking about that first dance with Cole. How terrified I was to step onto that floor, certain I would stumble and fall. But his arms were steady, his step sure. That's how our whole life together has been, me, uncertain but willing, him, confident but gentle. Together we found our rhythm. The greatest gift Cole gave me wasn't his name or this ranch or even our beautiful children. It was the certainty that I was enough, exactly as I was. That my worth wasn't measured by the steadiness of my gait, but by the steadfastness of my heart. Tonight, as I watch the sunset paint the sky in the same colors it did the evening he proposed, I feel him near. Soon I will join him for our next dance. And this time, I know I'll move without limping, without pain. But even if the next life holds the same limitations as this one, it wouldn't matter. Because Cole taught me that true love doesn't see limitations, it sees possibilities. And oh, what wonderful possibilities we made real together." The journal was passed down through generations of Zimmermans, along with the story of Zoe and Cole, a reminder that love sees with the heart, not the eyes, and that sometimes the greatest dance of all is the one that begins with an unexpected invitation and continues long after the music ends. In Taylor, Arizona, their legacy lived on. The dance hall they had first met in was eventually replaced by a more modern structure, but a small plaque commemorated the spot where a cowboy had crossed a crowded room to ask a woman with a limp to dance, changing both their lives forever. Each spring, the town held a special dance in their honor, where the first song was always reserved for couples who had found love despite obstacles or differences. It became known simply as Zoe and Cole's Dance, a tradition that celebrated not just their particular love story, but the universal truth that real love sees beyond the surface to the person within. And in the cemetery on the hill overlooking the town and the ranch they had built together, their headstones stood side by side, bearing a simple inscription that captured the essence of their extraordinary ordinary life. Cole and Zoe Zimmerman, they danced through life together 1888-1920, 1888-1925.